We continue our conversation about writing with Martin Amis. He won the Somerset Maugham Award for his debut novel, The Rachel Papers, when he was only 24. Since then, he's written such critically acclaimed books as The Information and Night Train. Later, we'll talk about his new collection, Heavy Water and Other Stories. I'm pleased to have him here, especially to join Elmore Leonard in this conversation about writing. You said to me during the break that you were sent to interview Martin.
No, it's the other way around.
Yeah. Martin was sent to interview you. And what happened?
I interviewed him. Actually, it turned into more than that. We had an adult exchange of views.
Yeah. An adult exchange of views.
Yeah.
In contrast to what? A juvenile exchange of views?
Yes, indeed. In front of an audience in Los Angeles. Yeah. And it was basically an interview, but we sort of expanded out.
But I said the way it was set up, I should have been interviewing.
Oh, you should have been. He was interviewing you, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Did you hear what he said about you?
I did.
Yeah, I mean, did you understand what he meant?
Yeah. And my heart soared like a hawk.
What would you say about him?
See?
Yeah, like a hawk. Is that it? Oh, I get it now, sir. I get it.
That's how you do it. No, what I'd say about Elmore, or if I may, Dutch, is he has something called perfect pitch. It's usually a musical expression, but he has it in prose. Yeah. That, you know, more than other great popular writers like Kurt Vonnegut and Chandler, page after page goes by without, and this is not true even of Henry James and Conrad, where there are no kind of nasty little repetitions or rhymes or you know, elbows or kneecaps sticking out. It's a wonderfully smooth, continuous prose.
Where does that come from? Perfect pitch.
Well, I didn't know that.
You never heard it described that way?
I've never applied that. No, I just try to keep it moving without showing off. I don't want to show off at all. You know, because it's so obvious. When you're, I try not. I don't want it to look as though I'm writing. That's the whole thing. I try not to use constructions that are obviously written constructions.
Everybody says, I guess, in almost everything, you should never let your technique show.
Yeah, well, sometimes it reveals, you know, you can't get out of that. Someone once said, when you're looking through your stuff, if anything strikes you as particularly fine, you should strike it out. But I think that's a...
I don't get that. If it strikes you as particularly fine, you should get it out because it's what? It's too what?
Worked at. It sniffs of the lamp, as they say.
Sniffs at the lamp.
Sniffs off the lamp.
I got it again, didn't I? I'm getting it.
It means you stayed up late working on that one.
Yeah.
But no, it's true. It's true. Your style is based on the rhythms of speech, and mine is you know, does call attention to itself. I'm afraid.
But that's the purpose. You want it to call attention to the writing.
Well, someone once said woundingly that each sentence of mine might have a little copyright or trademark logo at the end of it. But that's fine by me. I mean, you know, I like to write distinctively. I do like to play with words. You know, Elmore is pushing the narrative. The characters are driving the narrative.
And the dialogue is driving it.
And the dialogue's driving it. I like to slow it down a bit more than that.
And do what?
Well,
play with language.
Well, you know, what poetry does, for example, is slow everything right down. Poetry slows down time and says, let's really examine this moment. Now, you'd bore everyone blind if you try to do that with prose. But there are degrees, and you know, I'm tending a bit more towards that. I want people to just slow down and enjoy the sentences. You scorn plot and character at your peril, and of course I'm interested in that too. But I do tend towards the sort of ornate.
Are you interested in poetry?
Yeah, very.
In writing poetry?
No, I can't do it. I tried. I published 2 poems. My dad was a poet as well as a novelist, and he thought my stuff was too ornate. But he had the avenue of poetry where he could slow things right down and really examine the moment and use words very precisely. I don't have that, so it all goes into the fiction. But I care about poetry and read a lot of it. And I really started by reading poetry, not fiction.
Do you read a lot?
I read when I read all the time. I'm not doing something else, and that does work out quite a lot. Yeah.
You read a lot, Elmore?
Mm-hmm. Not as much as I used to, though.
Why?
I don't know. I'd rather watch TV. I sit and watch
Now that you've found something you like.
shows about bugs,
Bugs? You're a big nature guy. Huh?
insects and animals, and
Are you serious?
documentaries.
Are you
and-
serious?
No, nature stuff is almost the best thing on
Oh
TV.
yeah, love it,
Yeah.
love it.
Because?
Because
Yeah, because why?
well, you see how much alike we are, and to take a couple of little beetles, or take a couple of Cape buffalo, you know, and the two guys are smashing their horns against each other, and the girl buffalo's over there waiting to see who's going to come over, you
Come
know,
over the
and
bacon.
make out. And then the next night, it's insects, and here are two little beetles, and they're doing the same thing. They're doing exactly the same thing with their little pincers, and the little girl beetle's over here waiting.
Yeah.
And we're doing the same thing in singles bars or whatever, but perhaps we do it in a different way.
What's the worst thing about growing older?
That's an awfully big subject.
Have you thought about this?
Getting closer to death,
Really?
I think,
It is.
is up there, wouldn't you say?
Or a big prostate
Yeah, that would be bad.
is one of the worst things.
You mean in terms of the potential for cancer or just a big prostate period?
Just big
Sure.
period is,
Yeah.
is enough.
Do
yeah.
you think about death?
No.
You don't? Because?
Well, I think about it, but I
It is
don't
not modeling
dwell
for you.
on it.
Yeah.
But I do think though that I was raised Catholic, and I believe that there's life after death, and I think something will happen, and it's the next step. I'm not ready to go. I have a very good time, just not doing much, but just being. You know, just kind of looking around, observing, and talking to people, and I'm quite happy.
How much of an influence do you think your father had on you? We've talked about this before, but
You mean in life or in...
both.
He, I'm just writing about this now, so it's fresh in my mind, but the one thing I'm very grateful that he instilled in me and my brother particularly is that love was the thing. That was the most important thing. He said once, the most attractive part of a naked woman is her face. And we thought that sounded very good. And then on another occasion he said that the sexual sensations are vastly increased by love. And that put the cat among the pigeons with me and my brother, because we thought we wanted to fall in love for better sex, you know. But there was never any doubt that love was the quest, you know, that was the main thing.
You'd fall in love, it would be better.
Yeah.
You'd try love.
We wanted love
it
for
would
the
make
sex,
it better.
yeah.
That makes sense, doesn't it?
But I thought the priorities were clear in his case. I mean, he made it clear to us that this was the most wonderful thing in the
That's a
world,
great-
and that was his core message.
Are you? I mean, you must have thought about this notion of there's writing in your genes or something, right? I mean, it just wasn't that you lived in the household.
Yeah, but history proves that not to be so, except in this one unique case. I think talent is very strongly inherited, and when I look at the work of Susan Cheever or Jonathan Updike, I think it's clearly talent there.
Yeah.
What is not inherited, I think, is stamina, or dedication, or just the idea that this is the main thing you want to be doing.
Will.
Yeah.
What writers have influenced you the most?
Well,
I mean, is there a style that is in you that
that came from somewhere else.
Yeah.
I used to, T.S. Eliot said that immature poets imitate, mature poets steal. It was rather the other way around with me. I did quite a bit of stealing when I was younger. And you steal because you want the legitimacy of a great writer in your stuff. So I used to steal a lot of Dickens, and Dickens was the most recent writer to really have an influence on my style. But since then, all the usual suspects, I mean, Joyce, Nabokov, Bellow.
Yeah, but
Updike.
and how does it happen that they influence your style? I mean, you study it saying, what can I see and hear that I think I can incorporate in my work? Is it that base?
It's all a pleasure principle. That when I read Nabokov, the way he puts the words together gives me sensual pleasure. As you know, funnily enough, he was completely tone deaf, Nabokov, but whereas Joyce, the other great stylist, was a professional singer. But it's the way those two put words together that makes me smile. And that is what, you know, in your own way, you're trying to do with a different world.
Tone deaf.
Yes, he was. Yeah, he hated music. It used to just drive him crazy if there was any music being played. And yet, there are so many musical qualities in his prose that it's a shock to learn that.
Does music influence your work at all?
Jazz.
Jazz influences your work.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
Dizzy Gillespie, for example, seeing Dizzy Gillespie live, the last time I saw him was perhaps a year before he died. I felt I wanted to go home and write the things that he was doing, you know, and wondering where is he going to go with that? And as it was,
and can you, and in a sense, as you said, a typewriter or however you write,
well, I don't use it
or with your hands.
Yeah.
Is that how you do it? And can you feel it? Huh?
A pen? No, I don't feel it. No, I don't feel.
No. I mean, can you feel the sense of the beat in jazz so that it gives you some structure you want to? I literally go from your ear into your
yeah, I feel
hand.
a sense of rhythm, yeah. And
well, jazz is a popular a popular form that created in America, and you know, like science fiction, and like the kind of novels that Elmore writes.
It is said that your writing reflects an American influence.
Yeah, no doubt about that.
Where is that from?
From my reading, really. But I spent a year in America as a kid, and you were talking earlier with Elmore about the ear, and I think I would have not been so confident trying to find the American rhythm, the American voice, without that year in Princeton.
You wouldn't have been as confident.
No. I don't think I'd have even attempted it, perhaps, if I hadn't had that year. Because as a child, you know, if American had been a different language, I would have learnt it as a 9-year-old. But I did learn it, perhaps, in that year when I was a kid. And then I found myself in my 20s reading the Americans and not the Brits. And then eventually I plucked up the courage to sort of, as it were, bring myself fictionally to America in the novel Money. And since then, every novel I've written has had a kind of American aspect to it, or set in America, or narrated by an American. It's the language center, which is what England used to be.
Language center meaning?
Meaning this is where the language is really being stoked and cooked. The contribution from so many different ethnicities and cultures makes it the richest language. American is now the richer language, richer than English, than Brit English, I think.
How are you influenced by public events around you? I mean, the notion of what's going on around you in the country.
It's not. I'm not. As far as my references in the book, there could be references to Ronald Reagan some years ago in a book. There are references to things that are going on. And there are references to music and movies. But it's just the level of influence of interest of these characters.
It's what they're chatting about.
Yeah.
That's what I mean. So that would seep its way into it, because
sure.
that would seep.
But I'm not worried about dating.
I didn't mean that. I just meant I meant just what Norman. I meant just what Martin said. How public events may seep into it, and you want your characters to be talking about whatever, some interesting event that may be going on, or some change in the cultural mores, or what the hell.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, I think you only write about political events when you feel oppressed by them. You know, the Russian writers who lived through the Soviet, the first decades of the Soviet century, you know, were very much aware of politics because it could reach out and grab them and kill them. The only time I think English writers in the post-war period have felt slightly oppressed is under Thatcher. And Mrs. Torture, as Salman Rushdie calls her in one of his novels. And my novel Money somehow had Thatcher in the background of it. Now, I couldn't imagine any novel that would need Tony Blair in the background of it. He's too sort of bland and benign. It's only when you feel the glimmers of oppression that you respond politically with what you write.
I wonder if you could make the case that in times of oppression that the best writing comes out for all those reasons.
That's a sort of glamorous myth that some people have said, that, you know, the Soviet Union paid writers the compliment of caring about what they wrote. It's not true. I mean, they didn't care about what you wrote. They just cared about there being freedom and not wanting that to be abroad in the country. They just came down on it because it was an expression of people's creativity, and they didn't want that.
You ever want to write poetry?
Yes, but I don't know how. I asked Allen Ginsberg, how do you write a poem? And he said, here, I'll show you. And he reached down into his canvas sack, and he couldn't find a piece of paper. And he was going to...
You do need a piece of paper.
Yeah, but finally he got something. He was going to write on the back of it.
Yeah.
And then he wrote one line, and it had to do with the candlelight on the table. And just then, Mr. Wiley brought over Jamaica Kincaid, and that was the end of my lesson on how to write poetry.
This is Andrew Wiley?
Yeah.
He soon quashed that.
This was a few years ago. You know, and I might have learned.
Yeah. Is there something really, is there some great mountain you want to climb, or is it, you know, you're just in a very happy place now?
Well,
you're writing these things, and
I keep trying to make it better.
Yeah.
In different ways, but little.
This is already on the New York Times bestseller list, number 12, I think.
11 next week.
Oh, 11. Ooh. Well, that's progress right there. But, I mean, is it just getting better? I mean, you know, there's nothing, no kind of thing you want to write, or nothing, some defining piece or something like that.
The satisfaction is in doing it. And if I'm, no matter what the story is, I mean, it doesn't have to be something bigger than what I'm doing. If I'm getting the satisfaction out of writing a scene that makes me smile, and I don't necessarily smile right then after I finish writing it, but it may be a year or two later when I open the book and I'm startled by a scene that I wrote that I think is funny.
Stands up.
Yeah, it stands up. And I don't know, maybe I could get lucky and come up with a really good idea, you know, that just knocks everybody out. That wouldn't be bad. Instead of just kind of bringing a plot along as I go.
I was thinking about the fact that there are a lot of actors. They used to say that Olivia always wanted to do a musical, for example. You know, a Broadway musical, somebody once told me. You know, I know playwrights who want to write great novels, and novelists who wish they could write a play, and it's always people, you know, the pasture's always greener somewhere else. You know.
I'd like to try a play sometime.
You would?
Yeah.
What's keeping you? What are we waiting?
Well, you know, that's
gonna...
work too, though, Elmore. It's like working for the movies.
I know there is. I know.
It's what? Novels are not work, or
well,
what are we
no. You're the god creating the world, but in drama and screenplays, you've got dozens of other people to think about. All sorts of limitations, cost limitations. You know, if you write a play, it's got to be 2.5 hours long, right?
Right.
Ditto with a movie, you know, 100 minutes.
But you're an employee when you're writing a screenplay, and you don't want to be an employee. That's why you write books.
Yeah. So you don't want to be an employee.
No.
You like
it is work. I don't think of writing a book as work. It's hard.
But it's not work.
But it's not work.
It never felt more than a part-time job, and a very pleasant one.
Really?
But the thing is, you know, looking when we think about the future, you write till you drop. I mean, that's the deal. There's no golfing period in a writer's life. It is
golfing period.
There's no Florida.
There's no retirement.
There's no pottering around in the garden.
There's no Sun City somewhere.
No. You're in it for life.
You could go to the great tennis sort of
tennis ranch. That's not going to happen.
He's left writing for a tennis ranch.
You can't retire.
Because?
My father, after he had his final stroke would still batter away at the typewriter, even though what was coming out was just a succession of letters. It's because it's always the next thing. You're trying to get the next thing done.
Or is it because you got something you can say, you want to say all the time?
I think it's sheer addiction to this mysterious process.
Help me understand that. What's the addiction? The addiction is to...
The addiction is to having a parallel reality together with your life trundles along, but you have this other world that you order and occupy, where anything, all sorts of crazy things can happen, and mere life looks very thin without this extra dimension.
All right, I'm going to talk a little bit about this book. Stay with me, Elmore. You may have to help me out. No, don't leave. I actually have changed and might want to do this. Let's talk a little bit about this book, The Heavy Water. Where's the title from? This is a collection of your stories.
It's a rather misleading title because heavy water is a constituent of nuclear weapons. And,
yeah, of course it is. Yeah, I knew that.
But the story that refers to, heavy water, stands for gin.
Yeah.
It's just booze is what heavy water means.
But why is that the title of the book?
I thought it was of
had
the
a nice
stories.
ring to it?
It had a kind of ring, yeah.
If I read through these, would they anyway give me some sense about you, a trace through your life that a touchstone with
I think
where you are and came from?
All fiction is tremendously revealing of the author. Even the most sort of remote fantasy is telling you a very great deal about the author's mind. It's the true biography of your mind. More
so in fiction than anything?
I think so, because with poetry there's so much artifice that it isn't such a record of your daily being.
Do you think that's true about you?
Well, there's a wonderful story in here where screenwriters' screenplays sell to little magazines, and poetry sells to the studios for millions of dollars. And it's just a wonderful story.
There's a lot of rewrites on the poems.
The rewrites are unbelievable. They're I said to Martin the other night that he's taken this situation and stretched it out as far as it'll go to make it, more
ridiculous.
Ridiculous. I didn't want to say ridiculous, but it doesn't break. It doesn't break. It stays whole. It's the first story in there.
What's it called?
Career Move.
Career Move.
Yeah.
Elmore Leonard, Be Cool, Martin Amis, Heavy Water, and Other Stories. I should ask you about Linda Moon before we go.
What should you ask?
Who was Linda Moon?
Oh, Linda Moon was a name that of a character in a book, Glitz. And I liked the name, and I wanted to use the name again, but Lorimar bought Glitz, so they owned Linda Moon. So I have a scene in this book in which that Linda Moon from Glitz meets this Linda Moon, who's singing, who's performing at a place in Miami, and this Linda Moon says, "God, I love your name, Linda Moon, love it." And the other one from Glitz says, "Take it, I'm not using it anymore. I'm married to this cop, and I've got 4 kids." So that's how I got to use the name again, you see.
All right, one more time. Elmore Leonard, Be Cool, number 11 on the New York Times bestseller list. Martin Amis, Heavy Water and Other Stories, a collection of short stories recommended by Dutch Leonard, among others. Thank you both. Pleasure.
Thank you, John. Nice to see you.
Thank you.
Back in a moment. Stay with us.